Aliens marked the lowest-ranked Catgirl student. A human geek copied the mark and dared them. The space station Nova Lumina floated quietly above a blue-green planet, its metal hull glinting in the sunlight that streamed from the nearby star. Students from countless worlds walked its corridors, chatting, laughing, or hurrying to their next classes. Among the many species, humans were still unusual here. Their curious nature and boundless energy often drew attention, sometimes admiration, sometimes skepticism. Ethan, a human student with messy brown hair and round glasses, did not care about skepticism. He had a love for technology, for puzzles, and for observing everything around him. He loved to understand how things worked, from alien machinery to the way social hierarchies functioned in a place like Nova Lumina. Myra walked a few meters ahead of him. She was a catgirl, her ears twitching slightly as she listened to the conversation between her classmates. Her tail swayed nervously behind her. Unlike most students who prided themselves on showing off their skills, Myra was quiet, often keeping to herself. She didn't raise her hand in class, didn't compete in contests, and rarely volunteered for group projects. There were many reasons for this, but the one that drew Ethan's curiosity most was the small glowing mark on her hand. It pulsed faintly with a soft light that seemed to shift colors depending on her mood. Most students avoided looking at it. Whispers filled the corridors whenever someone noticed. "Lowest rank," they said, "the mark of failure." Others didn't even know what it meant but sensed they should not ask. For Myra, it had always been a source of anxiety. Every time she saw the mark, a knot of worry tightened in her chest. She feared being judged, feared being singled out, feared the alien authorities' attention that the mark might bring. Yet she could not hide it. The mark was small but impossible to erase, and it had appeared one day without explanation, leaving her uncertain and uneasy. Ethan, however, was not like most students. While others saw only a symbol of failure, he saw a puzzle. He had always been fascinated by how alien marks worked. Some were purely decorative, some indicated rank, and others hinted at abilities or potential. He did not know which category Myra's mark belonged to, but he wanted to find out. Every day, he watched from a distance as she moved through the station, taking careful notes on her behavior, on how the mark glowed when she laughed, when she spoke, or when she avoided contact with others. One afternoon, while Myra was sitting alone in the observatory, gazing at the planet below, Ethan approached cautiously. His backpack was full of holographic devices, scanners, and small gadgets he had built himself. He had spent weeks creating a copy of her mark using a holographic projection that could stick to skin. "Hi," he said softly, careful not to startle her. "I'm Ethan. I've been studying your mark." Myra blinked at him, her tail stiffening. "Studying my mark?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She had grown used to avoiding attention, especially from humans who often acted too boldly. "Yes," Ethan replied, holding up his hand. On it, a faint holographic version of her mark shimmered. "I made a copy. I wanted to see if it did anything, if it had some kind of meaning." Myra's ears twitched nervously, but her curiosity overcame her fear. She leaned forward slightly. "You copied it?" Ethan nodded. "I know it's risky, but I wanted to understand." "Maybe it's not a sign of weakness at all." Myra studied him carefully. Most people avoided her because of the mark, or they laughed at her quietly behind her back. Ethan did something different. He treated it like a mystery to be solved, not a shameful stigma. Slowly, she nodded. I've never seen anyone do that before. No one dares." "That's the point," Ethan said with a small smile. "Sometimes rules exist only because people are afraid, but if you look closer, they might just be puzzles waiting to be solved." Over the next few days, Ethan and Myra began meeting secretly in the observatory. He asked questions, made observations, and tried different methods to understand the mark. It responded to their emotions in subtle ways, glowing brighter when Myra laughed, dimming when she felt anxious, shifting color when they approached certain alien artifacts. Myra began to notice patterns she had never recognized before. One evening, as the artificial lights of the station dimmed and the stars outside shone brightly, Ethan showed Myra a new idea. "What if this mark is not meant to punish you?" he asked. "What if it's a tool, a way to unlock abilities we don't understand yet? Something that responds to curiosity, courage, or creativity." Myra stared at her glowing hand. For the first time, she imagined the possibility. What if she was not weak? What if this mark could be a gift rather than a burden? The thought made her heart beat faster, but not with fear. This was excitement, hope, and anticipation. I want to try, she said quietly, but I don't know what to do, Ethan smiled. We experiment carefully, safely, and we observe, that's all. They started small. Using holographic projections and simple devices, they tested the mark's reactions. They found it responded to touch, to sound, to changes in light. It seemed to be learning from them, adjusting in subtle ways. Sometimes it pulsed in time with Myra's heartbeat. Other times it glowed in patterns that resembled mathematical sequences. Ethan documented everything meticulously, his fingers flying over his tablet. Myra watched in fascination, her fear gradually melting into curiosity. Other students began to notice small changes too. When Myra and Ethan worked together, minor station systems seemed to respond to them in unusual ways. Lights adjusted automatically when they entered rooms, small holograms flickered into being near their hands, and puzzle-like security systems they encountered seemed to simplify themselves. Rumors started circulating. Some students whispered that the mark had powers, but no one understood how or why. Myra felt herself changing. Her confidence grew not drastically but steadily. She began raising her hand in class, answering questions more boldly, and even suggesting ideas in group projects. The mark glowed brighter when she spoke, almost as if encouraging her. Ethan noticed, of course, and praised her small victories. "See," he said one day, as the two of them watched a holographic projection of a star map. "You're learning to work with it, not against it." That's how potential grows. By the end of the week, they had made a significant discovery. The mark seemed to respond most strongly to courage combined with curiosity. It pulsed when Myra tried something new, when she solved a problem in an unusual way, and when she approached challenges with a positive mindset. Ethan suggested that perhaps the mark had been misinterpreted by the alien authorities all along. Maybe it wasn't a punishment, but a measure of latent potential, hidden abilities waiting to be unlocked. One afternoon, as they walked through the central hub of Nova Lumina, a small crowd of students gathered nearby. They were whispering and pointing at Myra, but not in the usual mocking way. Something had shifted. People were curious. She felt their eyes on her, but did not shrink. She felt a strange mix of pride and determination. Ethan walked beside her, calm and confident, as if to silently say, "You're not alone." The mark on her hand pulsed gently, responding to the attention, but not in fear. It seemed pleased. Myra realized that what had once been a symbol of low rank and failure was beginning to feel like a symbol of something else entirely. Resilience, courage, and the willingness to try despite uncertainty. That night, Myra and Ethan sat in the observatory, the stars stretching endlessly outside the wide glass windows. Ethan projected a 3D model of the station, highlighting areas where the mark seemed to interact with technology in unexpected ways. Myra reached out, touching the hologram with her glowing hand. The mark pulsed brightly, and for the first time she smiled freely without worry or hesitation. "You know," Ethan said quietly, "this is only the beginning. The mark has a lot more to teach us, and so do we. Maybe it's waiting for someone who dares to be curious enough to understand it." Myra nodded. She had never thought of herself as daring. But with Ethan's encouragement, she realized that courage didn't have to be loud or reckless. It could be quiet, careful, and patient. It could be about trying, learning, and believing in one's own potential. As they left the observatory and walked through the glowing corridors of Nova Lumina, Myra felt a spark of hope she had never known before. The mark on her hand was no longer a source of shame. It was a companion, a guide, and perhaps a key to something extraordinary. And somewhere in the background, other students watched, some with curiosity, some with admiration. The idea that a human and a Catgirl could work together to unlock mysteries of the mark was starting to spread. Small ripples of change had begun, and though Myra did not yet know how far it would go, she felt ready to face it. For the first time in her life, she was not the lowest-ranked student. She was the one who had the courage to explore, to question, and to dare. The next morning, Nova Lumina was alive with energy. Students hurried through the wide corridors, carrying tablets, books, and equipment from one lab to another. The station itself seemed to hum with quiet activity, the soft whirring of machinery and distant footsteps blending into a constant rhythm. Myra walked beside Ethan, her hand brushing against her tablet, the mark on her skin pulsing faintly as if sensing the excitement around her. She had never felt so awake, so aware of her surroundings. Ethan carried a small holographic projector in his backpack, ready for the morning's experiment. "Today," he said, "we try to see if the mark responds to problem solving, not just small puzzles, but something more complex." Myra raised an eyebrow. "Complex how?" Ethan grinned. "We're going to build a simulation, a mini interstellar challenge. If the mark reacts the way I think it will, we might learn how it chooses to respond to intelligence and courage." They found an empty classroom with wide windows and a view of the station's lower levels. Ethan set up the projector, and a three-dimensional hologram of a small asteroid field appeared. "Our goal," he explained, "is to navigate a ship through this field without touching anything. But here's the twist. The hologram adapts to how we approach it. If we are creative, careful, and confident, the obstacles change to help us. If we hesitate, the path becomes more complicated." Myra looked at the hologram skeptically. "And you think the mark can do what exactly?" Ethan held up his hand, showing his holographic copy of the mark. "I don't know exactly, but I've noticed that when you engage with challenges, it reacts. Sometimes it glows, sometimes it pulses in rhythm with your thoughts. I think it learns, adapts, maybe even guides us." Myra took a deep breath. Her tail flicked behind her, a mix of nerves and excitement. She placed her hand over the hologram, letting the mark touch the projection. A soft light spread through the room, faint at first, then stronger as the mark pulsed. The holographic asteroid field shimmered and shifted, responding to her presence. Ethan's eyes widened. "It's working," he whispered. Together they guided the virtual ship through the twisting obstacles. Myra was careful at first, hesitant to make a wrong move. The mark glowed softly, almost like it was encouraging her. Ethan, on the other hand, moved boldly, experimenting with angles and shortcuts. His holographic mark pulsed as well, synchronized with Myra's, creating a strange rhythm that seemed to control parts of the simulation. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. They tried different strategies, learned how the mark responded to hesitation, to courage, and to creativity. They discovered that if Myra remained calm and focused, the path through the asteroid field became smoother. If she panicked or second-guessed herself, the obstacles multiplied. The marks were not just decorations, they were active participants, guiding and reacting to their thoughts. During a break, Myra looked at Ethan with amazement. "I never thought this could be possible." "The mark, it's helping us. It's like it wants us to succeed." Ethan nodded, his glasses slipping slightly down his nose. "Exactly. And if it can respond like this here in a controlled environment, imagine what it might do in real situations. Maybe it's not just a tool, it's a way to measure potential, to encourage growth." Their secret experiment did not remain secret for long. Other students began noticing unusual patterns around Myra. Small holographic effects appeared when she passed by, lights subtly adjusting, doors opening without touch, and systems responding almost intuitively to her presence. Whispers spread quickly through the station. Some were curious, some skeptical, but a few bold students approached her. One of them, a tall, blue-skinned alien named Vera, stopped in front of Myra during lunch. "I've noticed strange things happen when you are around," she said cautiously. "Do you know why?" Myra glanced at Ethan, who shrugged. "We're experimenting," he said simply. "We don't know everything yet." Vera's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Can I watch? I want to see if it works for me too." Myra hesitated, but then nodded. "Sure, you can observe." The three of them returned to the observatory, where Ethan set up the holographic simulation again. Myra placed her hand over the projection, letting the mark pulse. The asteroid field shimmered in response. Vera watched closely, fascinated as the holograms shifted and adapted. It was clear that the mark was not only a personal guide for Myra, but could interact with others indirectly, responding to teamwork and shared effort. By the end of the day, a small group of students had gathered, drawn by curiosity and the subtle displays of the mark's abilities. Myra, once isolated, was now surrounded by peers who respected her presence. Ethan smiled quietly. He had not only helped Myra discover her own potential, but had also created a ripple of interest and admiration among the students. That night, as the artificial lights dimmed and the station rotated silently above the planet, Myra sat with Ethan in the observatory. "Do you think the authorities will notice?" she asked, touching her glowing hand. Ethan shook his head. "Maybe, but it doesn't matter. Right now what matters is what we are learning. The mark is teaching you and you're teaching it." That's more important than their rules or labels. Myra nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. For the first time, she felt confident not because of a grade or rank, but because of her own curiosity and courage. She understood that learning and experimenting could be powerful, even without anyone noticing. Over the next week, their work became more ambitious. They built simulations that mimicked alien technology, created puzzles that tested memory and strategy, and even attempted small modifications to the station's holographic interface. Each time, the mark pulsed and glowed, responding to their focus and determination. Other students began to join, curious to see how it worked. Humans, catgirls, and aliens of all kinds came together, working collaboratively, sharing ideas, and observing the effects of the marks. Ethan noticed an interesting pattern. The mark seemed to respond most strongly when Myra and the others combined logic, courage, and creativity. It was as if the mark recognized not just intelligence, but a willingness to explore, to try, and to learn from mistakes. This was a revelation. What had been considered a mark of failure was actually a tool for growth, a system designed to encourage students to push beyond their comfort zones. One afternoon, Myra was approached by an alien teacher, a tall, silver-scaled instructor named Kale. "I have been observing your work," Kale said, his voice calm but firm. "Your mark is unusual, but your methods are impressive. You seem to understand it better than most." Myra's ears twitched nervously. "Thank you, sir," Kale nodded. "Continue what you are doing. But remember, the mark is not just a personal guide. It is a test of adaptability and cooperation. Use it wisely." After Kale left, Myra looked at Ethan. "He didn't scold me. He actually encouraged it." Ethan grinned. "Exactly, you're proving that the mark isn't a punishment. It's a chance to grow." Word of their experiments continued to spread. Students who had ignored Myra before now wanted to join her small team. She welcomed them, sharing her experiences and encouraging them to observe carefully. With each new student, the mark seemed to respond in more complex ways, pulsing in patterns that guided collaborative problem-solving and creative thinking. By the end of the second week, Myra's confidence had transformed completely. She walked through the corridors with her head high, no longer hiding from attention. The mark on her hand glowed softly, a symbol not of failure, but of discovery, curiosity, and courage. Ethan remained by her side, quietly proud of the changes he had helped inspire. One evening, as they watched the stars from the observatory, Myra spoke quietly. "I never imagined the mark could be anything other than shameful, but now I think it's a gift." Ethan nodded. "It is, and not just for you. It's a gift for everyone who is willing to explore, to learn, and to be brave enough to try." Myra smiled, her tail flicking happily behind her. "Then we keep going. We see how far it can take us." And so, in the heart of Nova Lumina, amid the hum of machinery and the glow of distant stars, Myra and Ethan continued their experiments. They were no longer just students. They were explorers, discovering the hidden potential within themselves, the mark, and the community around them. By daring to question, to copy, and to learn, they were beginning a change that would ripple through the station, showing everyone that courage and curiosity were far more powerful than fear or judgment. The morning on Nova Lumina felt different than usual. The air was buzzing with excitement and whispers. Notices had appeared throughout the station, announcing a challenge for all students. The alien authorities had devised a complex simulation to test intelligence, creativity, teamwork, and problem-solving. The notice emphasized that the challenge would be difficult even for top students. Many feared it, some ignored it, but Myra and Ethan felt a surge of curiosity. "This is it," Ethan said, adjusting his glasses as they entered the crowded central hall. "This is the test the authorities mentioned, the one where the mark might matter the most." Myra's ears twitched nervously. I don't know if I'm ready for something like this. There will be so many top students competing. I'm not used to being in the spotlight." Ethan smiled reassuringly. "You're not alone, we'll work together. And remember what we've learned, the mark reacts to courage, creativity, and focus. That's what will guide us, not luck." They made their way to the simulation room, where students from various species were gathering. Holographic displays lit up the space, showing a giant virtual field filled with puzzles, obstacles, and moving elements. The challenge would be to navigate through it, reach the central core, and solve a final puzzle that no one had completed before. Myra's tail flicked anxiously, but she took a deep breath. Ethan extended his hand. We start together. One step at a time. She nodded, placing her hand over the glowing hologram. The mark pulsed gently, as if acknowledging her courage. The simulation began with a gentle hum. Holographic platforms floated above a digital chasm, some stable, others shifting unpredictably. Ethan moved quickly, mapping the path in his mind, while Myra observed the patterns carefully. When a platform tilted or moved, the mark on her hand glowed softly, guiding her where to step. Together, they moved forward, synchronizing their actions without speaking. Other students watched in awe. Many had expected Myra to struggle, but she moved confidently, her focus evident in the way the mark pulsed. Ethan followed her lead, adjusting his strategies as the simulation changed in response to their actions. The first obstacle was a series of floating blocks that required precise timing to cross. Myra hesitated at first, but the mark pulsed brightly, almost like a gentle nudge. She stepped forward and the block stabilized beneath her. Ethan followed, adjusting his path with a creative jump that allowed them to cross the final block easily. "See," he whispered once they reached solid ground. "It's helping us, trust it." Next, they reached a complex puzzle that involved arranging glowing symbols in the correct sequence to open a gate. Myra studied the symbols carefully, remembering patterns from the holographic simulations she had done with Ethan. The mark on her hand pulsed faster as her mind worked, highlighting the correct symbols in faint light. Ethan added his calculations and suggested a combination that none of the other students had tried. Together, they solved the puzzle, and the gate opened smoothly. "This is incredible," Myra whispered, amazed at how intuitive the mark had become. The challenge continued with increasingly difficult obstacles. They navigated a maze of shifting holographic walls, balanced on floating platforms over virtual lava, and solved riddles that required both logic and creative thinking. At every step, the mark pulsed, reacting to their focus, confidence, and teamwork. Myra noticed something remarkable. The more she trusted herself and her instincts, the stronger and steadier the mark glowed. Meanwhile, other students were struggling. Some panicked when platforms moved unexpectedly, others hesitated at puzzles, and a few simply gave up. Myra realized that courage and willingness to experiment mattered more than raw intelligence. Students who were considered top-ranked by traditional grades found themselves floundering when the simulation required adaptability. By mid-challenge, Myra and Ethan had drawn a small team of other curious students. Vera, the tall blue-skinned alien, had joined along with two others from different species. Each added their strengths: logic, observation, creativity, and moral reasoning. Together, they began to notice patterns in the simulation's design. The challenges were not just tests of intellect, they were tests of collaboration. The final obstacle was a massive holographic sphere floating in the center of the simulation room. To unlock it, they needed to align symbols while balancing on moving platforms and guiding energy streams from one side to another. The sphere pulsed ominously, glowing faintly red, signaling that this was the ultimate test. Myra's mark shone brightly, almost in rhythm with her heartbeat. She stepped forward first, analyzing the symbols and their connections. The others followed, each placing a hand on the holographic projection. Slowly, the energy streams began to align, responding to their combined focus. "This is it," Ethan said quietly. "We've got this." They worked together, adjusting their actions, communicating through gestures and subtle movements. The mark on Myra's hand pulsed in harmony with the holographic energy, guiding her choices. Vera noticed the alignment and adjusted her position, contributing to the synchronization. The other students matched her movements. Together, they formed a perfect chain of logic and creativity. The sphere began to glow a warm golden light. Symbols shifted into perfect alignment and the platform stabilized. A soft chime echoed through the simulation room. They had succeeded. The central core unlocked, revealing a holographic archive of past students who had faced similar tests. Many had failed, but a few had found ways to adapt and succeed, leaving behind records of their methods and insights. Myra stepped back, breathing heavily but smiling. "We did it," she whispered. Ethan nodded, equally breathless. "We really did." The room filled with applause, both from the observers and the simulation's automated systems. The alien authorities appeared on a holographic screen, observing their performance. Kale, the silver-scaled teacher who had spoken to Myra before, appeared among them. "Exceptional work," he said, his voice calm but impressed. You have demonstrated adaptability, creativity, and teamwork. The mark has proven to be more than a simple ranking. It is a guide for potential, unlocked by courage and collaboration. Myra felt a warmth spread through her chest. The mark pulsed brightly, almost like a smile. For the first time, she truly believed in herself. She had not just followed the instructions. She had led, adapted, and inspired others. The success of their team sent ripples across the station. Other students began to approach Myra and Ethan, curious to learn more about the mark and how they had succeeded. The idea that courage, curiosity, and collaboration could overcome traditional rankings spread quickly. Even some of the top-ranked students began to respect Myra, realizing that grades alone did not define potential. In the following days, Myra's confidence grew further. She began to share her experiences with younger students, encouraging them to explore the mark's possibilities. Ethan continued to experiment with holographic projections, documenting how the mark reacted to different challenges. Together, they discovered that the mark responded not only to intelligence and courage, but also to empathy and moral reasoning. When they made choices that helped others, the mark glowed more steadily, reinforcing the idea that true potential was measured not just by skill but by heart. Their experiments inspired others. Teams of students began to form, combining different species and skills to explore the possibilities of the mark. Nova Lumina, once a place where rank and reputation dominated, was slowly transforming into a community of collaboration, curiosity, and mutual respect. One evening, Myra and Ethan returned to the observatory, the glow of the station reflecting on their faces. Myra placed her hand over the holographic star map, watching as the mark pulsed softly. I never thought I'd feel like this, she said quietly. Like I can actually do something meaningful, Ethan smiled. You can, and it's not just you. This experience, it's showing everyone that potential comes from courage, curiosity, and teamwork, not fear or judgment. Myra nodded, her tail flicking happily. Then we keep going. We see how far it can take us, right? Ethan nodded in agreement. Exactly, and together we'll discover even more. In the heart of Nova Lumina, Myra had transformed from the lowest-ranked student into a leader and inspiration. The mark, once a symbol of failure, had become a symbol of courage, curiosity, and the power of collaboration. And for the first time, she understood that success was not measured by rankings or marks alone, but by the willingness to explore, learn, and help others along the way. The days following the challenge were filled with excitement and quiet change across Nova Lumina. Students no longer whispered about rankings or lowest scores in the same way. Instead, the corridors buzzed with curiosity. Myra walked through the station with her head held high, the glowing mark on her hand now a source of confidence rather than shame. Every time it pulsed, it reminded her of what she had achieved, not alone, but with a team of friends and fellow learners. Ethan stayed by her side, observing the reactions of other students and quietly recording new data about the mark. His glasses reflected the soft glow of holographic projections that tracked patterns in the mark's behavior. They had learned that the mark responded not only to courage and curiosity, but also to empathy and collaboration. When Myra guided others, helped them understand, or inspired them to try, the mark glowed brighter, as if acknowledging the value of her actions. Word spread quickly. Students from all over the station wanted to see the mark, to study it, and to work with Myra. Even those who had once ignored her or doubted her now approached cautiously, some with curiosity, others with genuine respect. They wanted to understand what made her so successful, what allowed her to turn a symbol of weakness into a source of strength. One morning, Myra received a message from Kale, the silver-scaled instructor. He invited her and Ethan to present their findings to a small group of alien authorities and senior students. The presentation would take place in the Grand Lecture Hall, a place usually reserved for only the top-ranked students. Myra felt a flutter of nervousness. The thought of speaking in front of so many people, including those who had once dismissed her, was daunting. Ethan noticed her hesitation. "You've done all the work, Myra," he said quietly. "You know more about the mark than anyone else. This is your moment to show it, to share what we've learned." She took a deep breath, allowing the mark on her hand to pulse softly. It felt warm and steady, as if offering reassurance. She nodded. "Okay, let's do it." The lecture hall was grand and expansive, with holographic displays lining the walls. Students and instructors from various species filled the seats. When Myra and Ethan stepped onto the platform, the room fell quiet. The alien authorities observed them with calm curiosity, while senior students exchanged glances, some skeptical, some intrigued. Myra began speaking first. Her voice was steady, carrying clearly across the hall. She explained how the mark had appeared, how it had been misunderstood as a sign of failure, and how it responded to curiosity, courage, and empathy. Ethan demonstrated their experiments with holographic projections, showing how the mark pulsed and glowed in response to problem-solving, teamwork, and creative thinking. As the demonstration continued, the audience leaned forward, fascinated by the interactions. The mark was no longer just a glowing symbol on her hand. It had become a living guide, responding to choices, encouraging learning, and shaping experiences. One of the alien authorities, a tall being with translucent skin that shimmered in colors, spoke. "This mark has been misunderstood for generations. Your work demonstrates that potential is not simply measured by rank or grades, but by courage, collaboration, and creativity. You have shown a new way to view students, and perhaps a new way to guide them." Myra felt a warmth spread through her chest. She looked at Ethan, who nodded with quiet pride. The mark pulsed brightly, almost like it was celebrating their success. After the presentation, many students approached them. Some were eager to learn, others wanted to observe more closely, and a few simply wanted to congratulate Myra. For the first time, she felt that she truly belonged at Nova Lumina, not as the lowest-ranked student, but as someone capable, respected, and valued for her abilities and courage. Over the next weeks, Myra and Ethan continued their work, helping students explore the potential of their own marks. They guided teams through simulations, encouraged creative problem-solving, and fostered a culture of collaboration. Students who had once avoided challenges now approached them with curiosity. The station's atmosphere began to shift. Competition still existed, but it was tempered by collaboration and mutual respect. Learning became about exploration and discovery rather than fear of failure. One afternoon, Myra sat in the observatory, watching a group of students experiment with holographic projections. Ethan joined her, carrying a tablet with new data. "Look at them," he said quietly. "They're learning so quickly just by observing and trying." "The mark isn't just helping you, it's helping everyone who is willing to engage with it." Myra smiled. "It's amazing to see. I never imagined it could have this effect. I thought I was just lucky, I guess. But it's more than luck. It's learning, courage, and teamwork." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. And you've led the way. Without you daring to try to copy the mark and to explore its potential, none of this would have started." Myra looked down at her glowing hand, tracing the pulsating light with her fingers. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for Ethan, but for the mark itself. It had challenged her, guided her, and ultimately helped her discover her own potential. In the weeks that followed, Nova Lumina underwent a subtle transformation. Instructors began to incorporate collaborative challenges into their lessons. Students formed mixed-species teams to explore new ideas, and even the alien authorities started reconsidering how they evaluated students. Myra's success had become a symbol, not only of individual courage, but of the potential within every student, regardless of species or ranking. One evening, Myra and Ethan stood together in the central hub, watching the sunset over the nearby planet. The station's lights reflected softly on their faces, and the mark on Myra's hand glowed gently in the dim light. "Do you ever think about how different things were?" Myra asked quietly. "A few weeks ago, I was the lowest-ranked student. Now, I feel like anything is possible." Ethan smiled. "I think about it all the time, and I think about how many other students we've inspired. The mark isn't just on your hand, it's in the way everyone is starting to think, to explore, and to try." Myra nodded. "I guess it's more than a mark now, it's a symbol. A symbol of potential, courage, and collaboration." "Yes," Ethan agreed, "and it's a symbol that anyone can follow if they dare to be curious and brave." The two of them watched as students passed by, some experimenting with holographic projections, others discussing new strategies and ideas. Myra felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had not only discovered her own potential, but had helped create a community where others could discover theirs. Over time, the mark became recognized across the station. Students who had once feared it now embraced it, understanding that it was a guide, not a punishment. Those who had been overlooked or underestimated began to shine, revealing talents and skills that had gone unnoticed. Myra had become a leader, not through authority or rank, but through courage, curiosity, and empathy. One day, Kale approached Myra and Ethan in the observatory. "You have changed Nova Lumina," he said. "You have shown that learning is not about fear, ranking, or punishment. It is about exploration, collaboration, and courage. The mark is no longer a symbol of weakness. It is a symbol of what students can achieve when they dare to try." Myra felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of pride and humility. "Thank you, sir. I never thought I could make a difference like this." Kale smiled. "You have, and your work will inspire generations of students. Remember that courage and curiosity can turn even the smallest mark into a symbol of hope." As the days passed, Myra continued to guide students, Ethan continued his experiments, and Nova Lumina thrived in a new culture of learning. The mark on Myra's hand glowed softly, a reminder of how far she had come and how much potential existed in everyone willing to explore, learn, and collaborate. In the observatory one evening, Myra and Ethan stood side by side, gazing at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of possibilities, challenges, and mysteries. Myra touched her glowing hand gently. "We've come so far," she said softly, "but I feel like this is just the beginning." Ethan nodded, a quiet smile on his face. "Exactly. There are countless mysteries out there, waiting for curious minds. And now we know that courage, creativity, and collaboration can turn even the smallest challenge into something extraordinary." Myra smiled, feeling the steady pulse of the mark. It was no longer a symbol of failure or weakness. It was a guide, a companion, and a reminder that true potential comes from curiosity, courage, and the willingness to help others along the way. And in the heart of Nova Lumina, beneath the vast expanse of stars, Myra and Ethan stood ready to explore, to inspire, and to continue proving that sometimes the lowest-ranked student can become the greatest symbol of hope and possibility.